Hi there, I'm Pavel, CEO of Sigil Fund. Sigil Fund was upgraded to a fully regulated, experienced investor fund in Gibraltar. So we do a couple of videos, interviews with key stakeholders and influential people about it. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Aaron Payas, who is partner at Hassans Gibraltar, which is a leading Gibraltar legal firm. And Aaron has many years of experience with regulated funds in Gibraltar and also with crypto and distributed ledger technologies. So we are very excited as a Sigil Fund to join forces with Hassans and specifically with Aaron becoming the EIF director in Sigil Fund. So Aaron, glad to have you here. Welcome. Please tell us about your experience with regulated crypto funds, other regulated crypto funds, and crypto as a new asset class.
Excellent. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, Pavel. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be a director of Sigil Fund. Yes. So, well, if I start at the beginning with my background, my degree is in mathematics. So I already bring a background in mathematics. So when I joined Hassans after converting to law, I started straight in the funds team. So I've been a funds lawyer for almost 13 years now. But over around 4 years ago, when the ICO craze hit us, I moved straight into the crypto space. There were a lot of things, a lot of concepts that you would apply to ICOs that are very similar to funds, because you've got concerns around investor protection, you've got collective pooling of assets, all of these things, which coming from a funds background, I could quickly apply to ICOs and private token sales. So crypto funds. So I with my maths background, I could understand the technology a bit better, I feel, and that allowed me to work and get to speed quickly with crypto and blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum and everything that was hot at the time. And then I found my little niche area there, which was in between or that overlap between crypto and funds, which is the crypto fund. So back in 2018, I set up the first 3 regulated experienced investor funds in Gibraltar. So the first 3 crypto funds in Gibraltar. Unfortunately, those never really took off because they launched right at the beginning of the crypto winter. So they found it absolutely impossible to raise any capital. So that was my start in crypto funds. And since then, we've been helping a lot of fund managers, crypto fund managers, set up either directly as an experienced investor fund, or if they just want to manage money from family and friends, then they've started off with a private fund and created a track record, which is precisely what you did, Pavel.
Yes, exactly. You mentioned the crypto winter. We actually spoke with previous previous interview with Peter Howitt about this, that Sigil started exactly in this period, and we had to dig in and keep going with small money, and eventually found more interest in 2019 and 2020. So I definitely can concur to this story that it was tough years. So speaking of tough years and the kind of crypto prices, are you also interested in crypto as an investor yourself, or are you more, sticking to the legal professional side as a lawyer and as a fund director?
So I would say both. I think I also have a background in asset management, so it's kind of a little bit of my passion as well, the wealth management, asset management. So I like to have my own portfolio of investments, a part of it which includes crypto. And as you know, Pavel, my thinking with crypto from the beginning was, I'm going to put more or less half of what I hold into Bitcoin, and I'm going to put half into to get exposure to Ethereum and DeFi and all of these other protocols. So we had a conversation, and I would rather have that money managed by a fund manager who can keep track of the markets that are always very volatile and always moving, and the market is open 24/7, and I'd rather have I want to avoid sleepless nights as much as possible. So in terms of becoming an investor, I think for me it works well to hodl on the Bitcoin, but have my exposure to DeFi and all of the altcoins via a fund.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like there's been this motto, yield farming is the new hodl, and it definitely is something that's very operationally intensive, and you need to constantly watching the world of decentralized finance, because there can also be hacks, rug pulls, and negative events that if they happen, you want to immediately move your money. So that's precisely what we do in Sigil. So I think this is also an interesting talking point, these decentralized projects and investment into them. So how does the world of these decentralized protocols actually collide with regulation, consumer protection, kind of crypto fund best practices, and the legal frameworks? I mean, you have experience, Aaron, I mean, working at Hassans as the leading legal firm in Gibraltar. You've done plenty of ICOs, crypto funds, but also other regulated funds. Talk a bit about how these worlds collide, the DeFi and the regulated environment.
Yeah. So with the in the regulated space, I always feel it's a bit simpler. You know what the rules are. You know how to obtain licenses, whether it's for your regulated fund or for your DLT license. There is a set process. You coordinate and you liaise with the FSC, you make your application, and you just go through the motions. What is most stimulating for me is when we're looking at things that either no one has looked at before or no one really has an answer for, and right now that is in the decentralized space. So that interaction between the decentralized space and the real world, as I like to call it, where people want to have a company, but they want to have their decentralized protocol. How do you marry one with the other? It's very difficult. But what's taking up most of my time now is just looking at what we call the road to decentralization. So that takes someone from the idea stage all the way to when they have they launch a protocol, and it becomes completely decentralized. In that during that journey, there are a lot of instances where regulation does come into play, or at the very least, you need to be very careful on how you operate if you don't want to fall foul of regulation. So that is, for me personally, I have a bit more fun with decentralized or clients working in the decentralized space than those who want the DLT license, simply because it's something new and it's something very, very stimulating.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's exactly the thing that we see from the fund perspective, like looking at the startup that is aiming to tackle some problem in the decentralized finance. Like you said, they typically start centralized. So there's a company, there's maybe agreement with investors that they will receive tokens when these are issued later on. And early on in the life cycle of these DeFi projects, the team actually holds the private keys, so they can change something in the technology if it goes wrong. So they have a backstop, so to speak. And then eventually, as the project matures and the technology gets more reliable, these projects will become fully decentralized, meaning they give governance to the community and token holders, where we typically as a fund also get more excited, because then it means our investment thesis is kind of validating.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is in that period between launch and when they lose control or they rescind control of the smart contracts, essentially, it is that period of time which is the most problematic, and so it's fun trying to figure out the best way for each client, which, as you can imagine, they're all different.
Right. You also mentioned that in the regulated framework, it's quite easy. I just have to add, because we're in Gibraltar, right? Like, we are in this place where we are lucky to have been in the very clear and regulated regime since early 2018, because the government was quite early and smart in adopting the distributed ledger technology regulated framework, which allows all the companies, like also Sigil Fund and all these DeFi aspirants, to work in environment of stability and kind of regulation clarity in the beginning of the project. That's very important. That's also something that's very important for Sigil Fund, right? Where you are now joining as a fund director, as an independent EIF director of our experienced investor fund, as a kind of oversight and independent authority. So can you talk a bit about this EIF directorship? I mean, are you also EIF director in other funds, maybe non-crypto funds? And what's the point of this role from legal and regulatory point of view?
Yeah, well, so in order to attract funds, you want to have a funds regime which allows the fund managers to devise their own investment strategy and being able to put it into effect. And you do that by not having too many, or in the case of Gibraltar, you don't have any restrictions around diversification or around borrowing or around which asset classes you can or cannot invest in. So the Gibraltar Experienced Investor Fund regime gives you that flexibility, and that is very attractive to fund managers. Also for multi-strategy managers like yourself, it allows you to, or Gibraltar has legislation to allow you to set up as a protected cell company, so you can set up separate cells within the same umbrella fund. And again, that allows you to have so like Sigil, so you have one strategy in cell A, cell B is a more stable strategy, and that is what fund managers are looking for. Now, the comfort that the regulator gets for giving you that flexibility is the fact that the law requires you to have two authorized, local and authorized EIF directors on the board. And that is very important for the management, for the corporate governance, or for the governance of the fund. We are, as the independent directors, responsible for monitoring and supervising the activities of the fund manager, and we are also directly reportable and regulated by the FSC. So I think it is a very good structure where you've got the balance between good governance and investor protection, whilst allowing an investment manager to come up with their own bespoke strategy, which they can put into effect.
Perfect. That's well said on the high level. So if we were to dig in a little bit like into this, how do you actually ensure as an EIF director from the capacity of your monitoring and like oversight authority, what can you actually do in practice to make sure that the fund is on track when it's with its investment objective? Yeah,
absolutely, and it's a great question. First and foremost, you develop a close relationship with the fund manager, so you're in constant contact with them, and you get to know them as a person, as a fund manager. So that is step number one. And then secondly, it really depends on the complexity of the fund. So with a DeFi fund, or with a fund with a DeFi cell like Sigil, then the interaction like we have, me and you, Pavel, is much more frequent. If you have a fund that owns a property and it's going to hold it for 7 years, then as you can imagine, there isn't that much to do. So it really does depend. So the more complicated the strategy, then the more you need to get involved. That's how it works.
That makes sense. And it's actually crucial, the point you mentioned in the beginning, that you find it interesting that you're constantly digging into DeFi from the legal side. But I have to say also from the investment side and the conceptual side. So we also both live in Gibraltar, so we frequently meet at events and webinars. We've just done the Hassans Academy DeFi session together, right? So from our end, it's actually, I would not say it's beneficial. It's probably condition precedent to effective working relationship with the EIF director, that he's knowledgeable and interested about DeFi as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get different EIF directors for different funds as well. So you've got, for example, when you've got more private equity funds or funds that are, for example, investing in companies in the insurance sector, for example, then that's probably not the type of fund that I would become a director of. There's you go for someone who is more specialist and has that expertise. And then of course it's about picking and choosing which funds you want to work with. It's not the case, and the FSC certainly does not expect EIF directors to just accept whichever roles come their way. It's about getting comfortable with it and making sure that you can actually deliver on your responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, it's actually been helpful for us to put all the practices into paper, you know, this 20-page custody policy and the investment committee and the research pipeline, and discussing with you and lawyers at INS, actually all these details. But like you said, like, you need an experienced lawyer in DeFi so that he doesn't ask me what's MetaMask and Ethereum,
yeah,
kind of thing. So
correct.
that makes sense. Perfect. I think we covered the regulatory regime and your role very much. Do you have anything to add on this topic?
Nothing. Just wishing you a lot of good luck.
Perfect. Let's end up with a surprise question, Aaron. What's your target price for Ethereum this year?
Target price? Let's say 7,500.
That's good. Yeah, that's a bit lower than some of the ambitious fund managers say, but definitely realistic. Let's see if we get there this year. Aaron, thanks so much for doing this. It's been very insightful, and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Pavel.
Bye.